Right. We are streaming live on Facebook. So I want to go ahead and let everyone know that this meeting, this monthly Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force meeting is streamed live via Facebook. Please feel free to go on and share your watch parties, or if you want to share the link so others can tune in, please feel free to do that as well. Make sure that you are on mute. So if you're not on mute, put yourself on mute. And we're going to go ahead and kick off our April Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force meeting. My name is Shelly Willis. I am the Senior Director of Workforce Systems Alignment at Workforce Central, and I am the Master Facilitator for this group that meets monthly, where we galvanize voices and create action steps. And so if this is your first time joining us, please let us know in the chat. We'll go ahead and do the chat roll call, start that off. Introduce yourself in the chat. And if this is your first time, please put "this is my first meeting" in there as well, along with your introduction. So go ahead and fire up the chat, get excited about what we're going to talk about today. This is part 3 of our Lens of Equity series. So if you receive the agenda, you will know that we're going to go through our welcome, our updates, and we're also going to go straight into our part 3 of our Lens of Equity mini-series, talking around policy. We have some great presenters today. Tamar Jackson is going to facilitate that part. And then hopefully, if time allows, and if the conversation is, definitely good, of course, hopefully we'll have time to still do our breakouts, and folks will meet us in the lobby so that we can talk about the work that the task force is doing and things that we have planned going forward, and the impact that being a part of the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force has made on you, your work, your organization. So that is very important. What we want you to know about being a part of this task force, this great, amazing ecosystem of galvanized voices, is that this is the place where you can tap into, build relationships, where you can grow your knowledge, share information, and at the same time, you can take all that you gather from here back to your organization and start doing some great work there. Seeds get planted, things can start to grow. So I want you to, we always want you to know that this is the hub for all of that wonderful work, and we're really happy that you're here. We also want to recognize this as Public Military Week. We want to acknowledge our Library Week. We want to acknowledge our library systems. If you don't know Pierce County, our Pierce County library system is a part of our WorkSource certified sites. So you can go into any 18 locations in Pierce County, and you can walk up to a designated WorkSource computer, and it's a connection site where you can get connected to all WorkSource related things that you want to do as a job seeker. If you're an employer, you can also walk up into any of our Pierce County libraries. They are designated WorkSource sites. They are branded WorkSource sites for you to be able to walk in and just receive that one-on-one service, and someone will work with you. But also, when you think about the library systems, we have our Tacoma library system, our Pierce County library system. Do you have a library card? Do you know that you can get a virtual library card? Are you using that card? Did you know that you can go to the library right now? You can look up, there are specific sites in Pierce County where they're doing drive-up services. You can check out books. They're also providing, they have a whole new initiative. They have some hot spots and things like that they're providing as well. And so if there's anyone from our Pierce County library system on here, any of our partners here are from the Tacoma library system, please let everyone know in the chat what services you're providing virtually or in person. And we want to make sure that we share that out, because libraries rock. The libraries are awesome. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, libraries, for being a part of our system connection efforts and being able to expand access to the workforce system and to utilize and be branded as WorkSource sites. So thank you so much for that. And we want to celebrate our libraries in multiple ways. So let's just give our library system and our librarians a round of applause, using your emojis, your hands, whatever you want to use, because I think it's important that we recognize that the library is a resource. And I know that for a lot of our communities, that's probably the one location that people can go in their community and gather and utilize the computers and things like that. So we want to make sure that we support our library, our libraries, our librarians, and all of the work and energy and efforts that go into that. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we want to make sure that we share that information. All right, so the chat is fired up. We've recognized the libraries. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Wolf so he can do our land acknowledgement, and then we'll turn it over to Tamar.
Thanks, Shelley. Good morning, everybody. Okay. We pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also express our respect for all other displaced Indigenous peoples who call Pierce County home. These are original homelands of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin, Steilacoom, and Muckleshoot. It is important to move beyond acknowledgement and reflect on your own history that brought you to this place. This land acknowledgement is one small step in an ongoing commitment to improve our support of Indigenous communities in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamar?
Hey, good morning, everybody. What is going on, man? It feels like I haven't talked to you guys in a minute. Man, it's April. Energy is just fired up right now. The sun's out. I'm a month away from my birthday, so keep that posted because the Gemini season is coming. Oh, man, first and foremost, welcome to the task force. I see so many new amazing faces. It's just a blessing every time I see you guys jump on and we get to collaborate and talk. For those that are new and have never been here, welcome to the task force. This is, really, this is all about you guys. I'm thankful for Workforce Central and them supporting our vision, but it's us building these dreams in the community and supporting the things that we do and supporting each other. So, man, every last one of you guys, please give yourselves a big hand. We are the new Motown. We are showing that collaboration is the new inclusion. So the more we can do together, the easier it makes for this community to be successful. And we are giving them and showing them the blueprint. It is not about us, but we do this because we love this. We do this out of passion. And ultimately, the commonality between every last one of us is this is our community. Pierce County is not the little Seattle. Pierce County is our home, and we represent it. And the more that we do this work together, the more that we collaborate and the more that we support each other, the better this community is going to be. So with that said, I'm so excited. This is going to be an amazing day today. If you guys missed 1 and 2, please go to the website and check it out. But part 3 is going to be fire. I just hope you guys get ready for it because they're about to bring the pain today.
All right, thank you. So we're going to do quick updates from our different groups, overview and progress reports and their needs. So we'll start with the People's Group, and then we'll go to outreach as soon as People's is done. And once outreach is complete, a representative from the organization structures group will do an update in that order. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda, co-lead for the People's Group. So for the update on the education pods is we have made contact with some people at Bates and working on getting information about their childcare program and how we can get clients signed up through them. The Speakers Bureau has been taking off. Our first speaker has completed the program and did their first speaking engagement. Went over amazing. And we have 3 more going through the process right now that we're super excited about. We're almost set up to take donations. And so currently we are looking for additional speakers as well as speaking engagements. And so if your organization or you know anybody who could benefit from hearing from someone with lived experience, feel free to shoot me an email. We'll get it all set up. And with that, Jeff, you want to go ahead and cover the I-5 Thrive?
Sure thing. And just to add on to that, we're starting to build the website for the roster of the Speakers Bureau, so that'll be live soon too. For I-5 Thrive, that is a cohort of people basically becoming the connective tissue of Pierce County, King County, Snohomish County, connecting vocational training, educators, employers, just trying to figure out how to better map that system. We just took a a membership inventory, if you will, of who's in the group and who's participating, and what our superpowers are, what we can leverage, and our why for being there. And so that was a really great exercise. So we're doing that sort of stuff. We're starting to map out the sector, and then also trying to figure out kind of our first move.
Outreach? Okay, I don't think we have anyone from outreach that's here today.
Of course you do, Shelly.
Okay, well, I didn't hear you didn't jump on there, you know.
I was trying to press the unmute button. I was trying to press it. Good morning, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you all. Outreach and engagement. We hosted, for those who were aware, we hosted our first quarterly event on Saturday, April 3rd at Metro Park Star Center. It was a drive-through resource fair, community drive-through resource fair. We partnered with some amazing community partners, and we did some really good work on Saturday. Got some much needed resources to families in need during the middle of this pandemic. Really just overall grateful for everyone that supported, donated, showed up, volunteered their time, and even just came by to hang out with us. And like Shelly went live and like got the word out to everyone. It was just a beautiful day and a beautiful moment, and the weather couldn't have been any more perfect. So again, just thank you. We put a lot of work into that. There was a lot of partnerships that we had to work on behind the scenes to make that beautiful event happen. So again, thank you. There will be more conversation around what the next event looks like and how we can get more of our partners involved, and that includes you all. There was not a lot of, I will say I was a little disappointed in the amount of community that we had show up, but I have to also remember that the marketing wasn't as advanced as I would have liked to get it out. And so, and then I also have to remember the demographic. The South Tacoma area is not usually a focus for the city, unfortunately. And so we're just trying to get those community members aware of the work that we're doing, show up for them, and let them know that we actually are here for them. So one of many to come. Anyone that is interested in joining us for the future events, definitely just let us know. We definitely can use more support and more hands and just helping us get the word out. Thank you. We're also focusing on the universal intake form. And Saturday's event kind of showed us that this is absolutely possible. We had so many partners there. We all merged together to ask for specific information that we just kind of needed for data purposes. But again, this is just a conversation that we need everybody to be a part of. We're still trying to identify what that intake form looks like, but it can definitely be done. If egos and pride can be put to the side, we can definitely support our community and not continuously re-traumatize them as they go into these different organizations asking for or requesting services and asking for constant information and why they're needing the services. And you know what I mean? Just constantly having to share their story over and over. People just need help, and we're all family. We're all here to help. We're all here to serve. So just trying to merge those resources that we all have into one intake form. And then diverse inclusion, I was really happy to get that information out to community members as they came to participate in that event. So a lot of people are aware that the task force is focusing on this DEI journey. We got the word out, and we're just moving forward with that. Tim and I are working really hard behind the scenes to make this happen. And that's where you all come into place. I know that we're all a part of this beautiful Equity Lens Summit right now, and it's showing kind of the organizations that are in this journey. But we're asking for our partners, which is all you, to, if you can reach out to us and just kind of let us know if you're interested in this, if your organization is in the journey, which everyone should be, we're all in this together, what that looks like, so that we can start highlighting these organizations kind of where they are right now and like what your future goals are in this DEI journey. So outreach and engagement has been working really, really hard behind the scenes. We're still looking for members. We're still looking for support. And Tim and I have, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. And I know that was a lot, Shelly. I'm done. Thank you.
Courtney, you're awesome. You and Tim are fabulous. I'm Cindy Caldwell, co-lead for organizational structures, and we are still working on this DEAI Lens Summit that we're working on right now, or the series, and I'm really looking forward to the group today doing policy. Just remember that we also have an onboarding packet that you can access either through the website or through the Facebook group. It's got a lexicon, it's got a resource, so there's like all kinds of resources on there, from books to podcasts to documentaries to people that can consult with you, different kinds of assessment tools. Excuse me, all of that is on there. So be sure and access those for your organization, especially if you're new. Reach out. If you can't find it for some reason, you can get it through me, you can get it through Juliana. My email is in the chat, so all of that is fabulous. And still working in the planning for the summit that we're going to be doing, so stay tuned, we'll tell you more about that. And just a shout out to the People's Group, and also that this task force is the richest resource you have for education, for skill sets that you don't have, for ways to educate your community. So I am the adult education elder for my church, and we have been doing education for anti-racist stuff since George Floyd was murdered. And most recently, we had Amanda Walking Stick and Jeff Wolf come and speak to my church and to tell us about their story so that we get a different view of what the world is like rather than our own bubble. And it was so profound. And I have to give a little shout out also to my church, in that we're the ones who got them thinking about doing a way that we can donate so that we can help those people experiencing homelessness and other marginalized communities get out of that situation, because their stories are profound and you will be moved. And so just think of what other communities that you're in that you could have them speak at. It doesn't have to be just your organization, just broad, go wide. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to turn it over to Tamar. He's going to facilitate our part 3 of the Lens of Equity series over policy. So Tamar, I'm turning it right on over to you and your group of wonderful presenters.
Thank you, Shelley. Man, I get to be a part of an amazing group to bring them on. I feel like I'm bringing a band to the stage, so I'm about to be the hype man for a quick second and make it happen. First and foremost, following what Cindy said, this lens of equity, and Courtney as well, Amanda, this team, we all came together and said, what's something that we can really do together? And that was to take a journey around this word, the acronym of DEAI. For the ones that are new, if you don't know the A, it is access. We all understand that doing this work, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can't do it without giving access to the community that it's meant to be for. You can do it all day long, but if you're not given the access, it's pointless to do the work because it's not reaching the people that it's meant to reach. We've gone through a lot of things, but in this Lens of Equity mini-series, we really wanted to highlight that we can't do this without each other. We're all, as organizations, we're on different journeys. We're going to take different paths, but we really hope that at the end of the day, if any of us get lost, we know where home is, we know how to recenter ourselves, and we all can come here to feel comfortable about asking for help. You shouldn't be ashamed of going through this journey. I'm Black and I'm not perfect at going through this journey. I still need help. I still need things and I need questions asked. So we all are in different places in this journey, different organizations that are taking this journey, but we all have a safe place to talk about what we're going through. So part 1 of this summit or mini series, I'm sorry, it was about the people. The people are the first and most amazing things you can have in an organization, in a community, but this work truly affects them. The diversity, equity, whatever that looks like, it truly affects them. So we wanted to really discuss and talk about the importance of making sure the people are the forefront of organizations, because that's what the community sees, period. If you have not had an opportunity to watch that, please go to the website, the video documentary, and you can start from the beginning. It was amazing and it was very powerful. So please check that out. If you missed part 2, we were addressing policies and procedures and really how to create equitable and inclusive practices. We were really talking about how we practice this work in organizations. It's important. You can't talk about it and not practice it. We all know when we talk about something and don't practice it, it gets put on the shelf and don't nobody bring it back until you get in trouble. And then you go look at that book again and all of a sudden it's important. So keep practicing every day. You can always get better at this work. But today, told you I'm gonna be the hype man today, because we got some heavy hitters coming, and every month has been different heavy hitters. So if we put them all in the ring, it'd be like the Royal Rumble, because they're all fire. This group is amazing. But today we're talking about policy. We're talking about how are we putting DEAI in the center of organizations' daily processes. I'm really excited about that. So let me jump. And if you guys don't know, I'm sorry, I got a little excited, but the Organizational Structures Committee is just amazing in itself. It's a lot of passionate people that are really looking at how organizations deal with best practices and playing fair with each other in the sandbox. I mean, honestly, that's what it is. You know, coming to other organizations, working with other organizations, you know, it's a big piece of what we do and just collaborating with each other. So big ups to the Organizational Structures Group. They meet once a month. Their next meeting is April 15th at 10 o'clock. If you want to be a part of that group and help them on this journey, please reach out to Dr. Cindy Caldwell. I believe that's who does the meetings and gets that all set up. Her group is amazing, and she will definitely be excited to run with you on that. Today's policy, part 3 of the Lens of Equity mini-series with the Powerhouse team. So I'm gonna introduce them and let them start doing their thing. Please, Davita Haygood, Michael Jordan, Delia Flores, Rashana Ware, Sarah Drufos, representing Multicare, the City of Tacoma, Metro Parks, Entrepreneurship, and Pierce College. That's how much power is in this room, and that's how we collaborate. So many amazing names. I appreciate every one of them organizations for allowing them to be here and represent themselves, but also represent their organization. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Davita and just let her start doing her thing, man. Congratulations, you guys. Welcome to the Lens of Equity, part 3.
Hello, everyone. I am excited to be part of this team. Please forgive me. I have 2 screens, so it's going to look like you're looking at the side of my head, but I see you. It's just the 2 different screens. So I'm eager to come before you with our team to talk about policy as the part 3 of this Lens of Equity. I don't know if we need more introduction. Tamar jumped in and did a great job. For myself, I am currently the Interim Director of Education at Pierce College. And does each person on our team want to give a little who they are real quick? So Michael, you're next on the list.
Hi, my name is Michael Jordan. I'm working as a consultant, business processes, some DEAI stuff, and also do photography. I have experience in this field just working with the businesses I've worked with and the organizations, and happy to be, not happy to be after Davida because it's going to be a hard person to follow, but happy to be able to present. So that's it.
Good morning. My name is Delia Flores, and I'm here representing Metro Parks Tacoma. Very excited to report a little bit about the outreach and engagement that we have conducted for budget development and how this applies to our policy changing and redeveloping. And we're really happy to present today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Dreyfus. I work for Multicare Center for Health Equity and Wellness, and I also am a collaborator with the EDI consulting firm called Community Centered Solutions, and I can't wait to dive in.
Nice.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rayshana Ware. I work for the City of Tacoma, and I also work for Bates Technical College part-time. And I'm really here to talk about policy and engagement. We've engaged with policy development with the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force in our internships. And I feel that we have a little bit to say about how that process went using continuous improvement.
Perfect, thank you. So the first thing I want to bring out, and I love this African proverb, that when the music changes, so does the dance. And I think that truly applies to what we're working on. You know, I don't know about you all remember back in junior high and high school when you go to the school dances, there was always that one kid or two kids or three kids who never figured out there is an actual rhythm to the song. There's an actual beat that they're supposed to follow. They're always offbeat. But there's also this important part of, as my daughter she does dancing, she does competition dance. And I always notice each genre of the song has particular dance movements that come with it. So if you're listening to hip hop, you're not going to do the waltz. It's not going to fit. If you're listening to country, you're probably not going to do the tango. So the music that we have been listening to for so long in our society is deeply rooted in a racist system. So that is the dance that we've been dancing forever. It's time to change the song. It's time for the DJ to get up there and change the music and change the song for us so we can have a more effective and inclusive dance that we're doing in our communities. So going with that, and we're looking at equity lenses. This for me has been one piece that I've every time I hear it, I'm like, we need to challenge it a bit more. When you're looking at, as it says here, an equity lens, the lens business bolsters to temporary application of fundamental anti-racist concept. It allows white folks to take anti-racist frameworks on and off like a pair of glasses. If I take these glasses off right now and I don't have contacts in, do not get in a car with me because I can't see the steering wheel. We are blinded, you know, we're blinded to the reality. We are blinded to what's happening. We could put our lens on and say, oh, this is anti-racism, this is equity, and take it off. But we want to go further than just the lens. We want to go much different than just simply a lens. And that's what has to happen when we're looking at policies and we're looking at policy changes. If you're just doing when the cameras are on or the CEO's in the room or the grant funding is coming through and that's when you put the lens on, that's not what we're looking for. That's not the goal of what we're reaching for. We are reaching for having true change, and I'm going to challenge people to say we want LASIK surgery here today. When we're looking at this quick glimpse, and I want to give this quick caution that it might make some people a little squeamish to see this, but when we are looking to truly make change, we want to go deeper than just putting on a lens. We want to completely have a surgical procedure that is going to dissect our view. It's going to change the decoding of our brain, how we perceive things, how we understand things, which ultimately changes how we respond to things. So let me play this really quick. And I wonder if I shared my sound correctly. Tell me if you can hear it. How's the sound?
We cannot.
No sound? Okay, give me 1 second. Let me go back. I think I forgot to share sound when I shared my screen. Better?
Begins with you entering the laser room and lying down in a relaxed position on the procedure bed. Next, anesthetic drops are applied to numb your eye. The surgeon will then position you properly under the laser machine. A painless lid separating device will keep you from having to worry about blinking or closing your eye during the procedure. Next, your doctor creates an ultra-thin flap in the cornea using computer-controlled laser pulses, which pass through the top layers of the cornea to form microscopic bubbles at the optimum depth and position, gently separating the outer layer of the cornea from the layer being treated. Your doctor will then gently lift this flap and hinge it back out of the way. You'll be asked to fixate on a blinking fuzzy red light, and your doctor will precisely align the laser beam with your eye. When everything is just right, your doctor will activate the laser. Painlessly, computer-controlled laser light pulses will remove microscopic amounts of tissue, gently reshaping the cornea. The pattern of laser treatment is determined by a sophisticated program and based on the detailed measurements that were taken during your preoperative examination. Before you know it, your procedure is over, and the surgeon will gently reposition the flap, smooth it with a special medical sponge, and allow it to dry for a short time.
So in looking at this, there's a couple points that I want to point out. First off, there is literally a cutting and removing of something that's very delicate that influences a person's entire view of the world. That has to be peeled back and microscopic, which means not just putting pictures of Black and brown individuals on websites, not just having those 1 or 2 implicit bias trainings, not just providing access to certain people. You're doing the microscopic work to ensure equity is happening in your institution. And in doing that and having that surgery done, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to take some time to allow the healing process to come from having that LASIK surgery. And I don't know if any of you have had it, to where your eye is reshaping and reforming and refocusing itself on what it's seeing. So through completing that reshaping and recording, as it says here, we're destroying the views of power, privilege, and elitism, as well as racism, sexism, ableism, and any social economic biases that are out there. We're completely changing that. So no more with simply just the lens. We're moving from the lens to LASIK surgery with us and redoing this. And as you're going through this procedure, as it says, you can't blink. The not blinking is the part of where you may get uncomfortable. I don't know if you guys remember as a kid playing the staring game. The person who stops staring first loses this game. You can't blink. You're going to have to stay invested and committed into this work through the entire process, no matter how comfortable it is. It's going to challenge us. It's going to challenge our views. It's going to challenge what we've learned even from the day of our births. It's going to challenge my niece just celebrated. Yesterday was Ivy League Day. I don't know. I wasn't that smart. And she was celebrating, she got accepted into Harvard. When we're doing this type of work, it's going to even challenge our most prestigious educational background as we're working to make these changes in our community. So when we're looking at this, we want to look at investigating a why. This picture for the longest time used to get on my nerves because this picture was put up everywhere, but then they enhanced it with the portion of liberation. And I love this part, and I believe Michael had said this, if there was not injustice framework, if there was not injustice framework, there would not be a need for equity policies. So we're used to the first three, the reality, equality, equity. But when we get to the point of where we truly want it to be in our society of liberation, we have to really change our view of what we're seeing. So I know there's a lot of us, so I will just answer my own question that I'm about to ask. The point of the liberation is getting rid of the fence. But we have to examine, why was the fence put there in the first place? Oftentimes when I'm doing this training, I ask, so why the fence? Why is the fence there for the baseball game? Most people will say, well, it's to keep, the people out, for protection, so they don't get behind the ball, so they don't lose the ball. And when we're saying, okay, protection, keep people out, I often ask, okay, if the fence was truly about protection, why is there not a fence around those in the bleachers? The fence is only there for protection for the individuals who did not pay, or pay their way, I guess I'll say, to get into the game. Because the last time I checked, and I'm not a baseball fan, I'll go to a game just to say I went to a game, but usually it's the people in the bleachers who tend to get hit with those baseballs when they're hit. It's not the ones on the outside. So why would there not be a fence protecting those individuals? It's all about that access. It's all about, you did not pay your dues. You did not pay your way. So you don't get the privilege to be in the game, to watch this game with us. But society will tell you the fence was there to protect. And that's where, when we're looking at this LASIK of equity, really being able to sit and say, okay, why? If we're implementing these policies in our company, why? What was the foundation? What was the context? Where did it come from? As an educator, I cannot stand Pearson. I cannot stand standardized tests. I really have a hard time with them. And one of the articles I have my students look at is talks about the desegregation of education. And I always ask them, let's look at this. What's wrong with this equation? So I say, is segregation good? And they, yes, it is. The students, Black and brown students are able to come together and learn in the same community as white students. I said, but what's missing? So make a long story short, I show them what's missing is, yes, schools were desegregated, but the teachers were instantly kept out. At that time, with the desegregation of schools, you start now seeing tests that teachers have to take to be able to teach in these schools. And the tests that were the standardized tests that were put into the system were designed to purposely keep Black and brown teachers from being able to enter these schools where we have now just desegregated Black and brown children into. So we are sending Black and brown children to schools in the efforts of desegregation to be taught by teachers who hate them, who do not like them. So that policy that is oftentimes painted as a way to work on the expertise was actually a gatekeeper. And so watching our policies to make sure that they are not gatekeeper. I can go on a whole tangent about, unions, but that's another section. That's a whole nother day. But a lot of these pieces are gatekeepers for organizations. So one thing, last one before I hand the baton off, ethics. Ethics is a huge thing in organizations. We all have our ethics director. We have our ethics training. We have our ethics policies. I really challenge individuals to go back and look at their ethics in their organization, because you will begin to see that oftentimes these policies go against DEAI full-heartedly. So an example, part of my culture, and I identify as a Black woman in the African-American community, is we love to celebrate. I grew up, if I got in trouble at school, there's 5 houses on the way to home who've already heard about me getting in trouble at school. My pastor lived across the street. He would come out. I heard you got in trouble at school. It is community. a lot of community that not only just stays, right now there's this ethics policy in a lot of organizations that your personal life is your personal life, your work life is your work life. But in the cultures that are very tight knit, those things they cross paths. So here's a quick glimpse that I wanted to see how we can inadvertently in our policies be racist. And like I've always loved this scene in The Princess and the Frog. And I'm gonna play it. It's only about, I think, a couple seconds. And I'll talk more about it and then I'll pass it on to Michael.
Gumbo smells good, Tiana.
I think it's done, Daddy.
Yeah, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely positive.
Yes.
Okay, I'm about to put this spoon in my...
Wait! Done. What?
Well, sweetheart, this is the best gumbo I've ever tasted. Come here. Eudora, our little girl's got a gift.
I could have told you that.
A gift this special just gotta be shared.
Hey, everybody. I made gumbo.
I got some hush puppies, Tiana. You know, the thing about good food, it brings folks together from all walks of life.
So looking at that and looking at our work environments, these same individuals oftentimes work long hours together. And that same aspect of community in the wrong workplace can be called a conflict of interest. There is a conflict of interest happening where people are engaging too much. If Tiana's dad was the boss, he was, their boss at work, but neighbor at home, there's that conflict of interest. So looking at and really examining some of those pieces to where, is this really breaking down and going against what is culturally acceptable, community, and really being sure that we really truly examine those whys. And Michael's going to give you the breakdown of what those whys are as we're looking at our policies, our ethics, and our practices in our community. It's all you now, Michael.
Good morning, everyone. My section, I get to follow Davida, is applying the ideas of root cause analysis to policy examination and development. I have a few slides here of some policies that have been in place or that have affected the current state of the world. I'm just going to read through them quickly and then just try to go through what I have. So this one is from the book, The Color of Law. It says, today's residential segregation in the North, South, Midwest, and West is not the unintended consequence of individual choices and of otherwise well-meaning law or regulation, but of unhidden public policy that explicitly segregated every metropolitan area in the United States. It can be seen in every state. In the book, even Mr. Boeing is mentioned. And next slide. In 1944, the GI Bill was adopted to support returning servicemen. The VA not only denied African Americans the mortgage subsidies to which they were entitled, but frequently restricted education and training to lower level jobs for African Americans who were qualified to acquire greater skills. Again, the color of law. Sorry about that. The Washington Supreme Court has interpreted I-200 as prohibiting reverse discrimination where race or gender is used by the government to select a less qualified applicant over a more qualified applicant. An act retaining to prohibiting, this is the quote from the actual website, to prohibiting government entities from discriminating, granting preferential treatment based on race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin, and adding new sections to chapter. One of the outcomes of this is African American participation in contracting is now at 0.06%, which is in 2021 is an increase from what it was in 2020. Participation when the bill passed was obviously higher, but metrics are unknown at this time. So these are 3 policies that were created. They were supposed to be making things more beneficial or fair, but the outcomes were that a certain group was affected and the fence was built, as DeVito was saying. Next slide. So root cause analysis is defined as a factor that caused a non-conformance and should be permanently eliminated through process improvement. It's that thing or that portion of a policy that blocks people or not indiscriminately, unevenly interferes with people's access to positive outcomes, upward movement, and all those types of things. The root cause is the core issue or the highest level cause. It's the thing sometimes hidden that shows up in the results. And the next slide, I believe there is I don't know. So true solutions live under the surface. When we look at some things, like DeVito saying in her slides, we have the whole baseball stadium. We're looking at fixing the boxes and we try to get people able to see what's going on. But the reality was that the fence needed to be moved and that was the issue. So sometimes when there are policies in place, we'll see the leaves of the trees, we'll say, oh, there's things happening, or if there's an issue, we'll change we won't call it a master bedroom, we'll call it a main suite, or we'll take Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima off the cover and just change it to some other brand. It's surface stuff that people are looking at, but in reality, you have to switch your mindset from just looking at the outside or visible things to make yourself look like an organization that's welcoming and equitable, but go to root issues. And one of those things is building incentive into policy. There's a short story about a ship company that shipped prisoners from Britain to Australia. They had terrible death rates for the prisoners, and the ship captains would say, hey, we can't help it. They're just not hardy. They can't make it this distance. It's a tough journey, and this is what it has to be. The company that was paying the shippers changed their policy to say that they would only be paid for the prisoners who arrived alive. All of a sudden, the survival rate went from 50% to about 97%. So that shows a way in which policy has huge impacts on turnouts and outcomes. Next slide. Whew, I'm trying to go through this quickly. So there's a reality of things that impact or come out of this. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. The roots are the issue. We got to get to the roots because they're gonna show what's happening. Everybody can read what's here. People negatively affected by our policies will know there are issues with the roots of your organization. And your processes and policy will determine your diversity. People that see that a space is not safe will go to a space that is, even if they have great talent. There's a thing in Black culture. If you go to a restaurant or a building or a space, you look around and see if there's other Black people there. If they're eating there, the food's probably pretty good. If they're looking at ease, then the owners and the people in charge of management are treating them equitably. So I'm going to give a kind of real life example in the next slide, I believe. I don't have these memorized yet, but yes. So I came across this post on Facebook and I thought it was pretty poignant related to this topic. The whole issue is there's a young lady who is talking about her experience while commenting on something that happened at Six Flags where some teens were denied jobs because of their hairstyles. And she says, hey, I get it. It's a private company. They get to choose what she said, same thing happened to me, but it was a private company. I'm just going to adjust the policy when I have my own place. So she said she's going to ban straight blonde hair as redemption. Next slide. From the comments, you can see that Linda sees the problem with this policy because even though it's just straight blonde hair that she's banning, there's a whole group that's going to be affected unfairly. And she says, oh, too bad you think this is a race issue. I had hope for you until your last sentence. And then Atia or Adia, I'm not sure how to say it. I'm going to guess Atia. She kind of flips the argument that people come across when they say there's an issue with this policy or there's racism existing in this situation. And she says, I never mentioned race. I only said straight blonde hair. Are you saying only a particular race that has that type of hair or has that type of hair and to ban it would be racist? Interesting. And then next slide. Somebody else comes in and says, there's no way this policy is in place. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're dealing with when you have to work at different places. They wouldn't do that. It's unfair. And we live in a just and righteous nation, basically. And then Atia says, hey, this is where I worked. My natural hair didn't fit their aesthetic. And she said, like I said, I didn't quit. They fired me. As soon as they mentioned it, I never came back, which goes back to what I was saying before. When people of skill or means see that a place is not safe, they're not going to maintain their position. You're losing workers and you're losing amazing people who could bring your company to new levels. Next slide. Then Michelle's one of the people that kind of gets it. She's like, yeah, this is the issue. And Atia kind of talks back to her and says, hey, this is how it is. And she said, even she realizes that's not just her that could be blocked out of the policy. There's other people that with other attributes that may be unfairly kept because of visual things about them. And in conclusion, I said, we see that people who are affected by policy can see when it's unfair. So when investigating or developing policy, we need to use that root cause analysis approach and ask more questions about the policy and also have people involved that will be affected by the policy if we're investigating or developing it. And then there should be one more slide or a few more slides. Then somebody else comes in and says, no, you're racist. And Jennifer uses the same argument that's flipped the other way. I mentioned hair color. Anyone can have blonde, straight hair. What's the problem? I haven't mentioned race at all. Why are y'all always pulling the race card? This is about hair color and texture. People are welcome to change color and texture regardless of race. Is it so hard to dye your hair another color and curl it to be more presentable? So I have one more slide, I believe, and I'll be done. The good news is heads of organizations are ridiculously in charge and can actively address policy from the roots up. The phrase ridiculously in charge comes from another book, Boundaries and Leadership. I recommend that highly. And then one more slide, maybe. These are the questions that your organization can ask of itself as you're doing these investigations and development. There's a copy of the slide, and I'm going to pass it off to Delia because she's going to dig even deeper into how we're investigating what our policies are and how they work and what the outcomes are. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And we're going to talk a little bit about outreach and engagement in policymaking. Outreach and engagement is imperative and necessary when creating, reviewing, or changing policies. We must involve the people impacted by it. Community outreach and engagement has helped redevelop budget development at Metro Parks. Due to the financial impacts of COVID-19, we were facing a $10 million budget deficit. Budget redevelopment included a budget survey, which was translated in 6 different languages, and it included a balancing tool in which the community helped us balance our budget. The balancing tool allowed community to move money around according to their priorities. We partner with anchor organizations to host and conducted community budget workshops, which were led by our leadership team. We hosted community listening sessions and roundtable conversations for continuous conversation and community feedback. We also created a community of practice cohort to help us develop a community equity advisory council. Next slide, please. DEI leadership is not simply an exercise in awareness. It's about using the awareness to make the changes and decisions necessary to serve community in a more equitable and inclusive way. Increase awareness and understanding of the true impacts of policies on people's lives. We need to ensure that we don't cause further harm by breaking our promises, commitments, or by colonization in our policies. This should come with a warning. These changes require a commitment to and to invest in specific anti-racist activities, trainings, accountable action steps, and measurements of progress. Next slide, please. We are familiar with the term lens of equity, but I would like us to consider the lens of systemic oppression and its negative impact. The National Equity Project has this great resource, which I will be referring in our presentation. It demonstrates the intersections between the 4 levels and how it translates from individual to systemic oppression. The 4 levels of oppression are: systemic oppression manifests on an individual, the interpersonal, the institutional, and instructional levels. Here are some examples. In the individual level, we battle between identity and difference, individual advantages and disadvantages, explicit and implicit bias, stereotype, threat, internalized oppression. In the interpersonal level, we deal with microaggressions, racist interactions, transfer oppressions. In the institutional level, biased policies and practices like hiring, discipline, engagement. We also deal with disproportional or racist outcomes and experiences. In the instructional level, systems of advantage and disadvantage, opportunity structures, society history of oppression, practices, and policies. Next slide, please. The National Equity Project reminds us that we make decisions each day that directly impact those that we serve. We struggle with how to respectfully reach out to communities we serve, to serve them in a culturally responsive way that don't perpetuate inequities they face. At a foundational level, we must analyze the culture and conditions that impact the people and places we interact with in order to aid our decision making. As leaders of equity, our primary concern is to interrupt those rules that serve either indirectly or overtly to prolong opportunity gaps for vulnerable population, to become agents of change who make strategic and courageous decisions. We must learn to run a set of filters or lenses, or have LASIK surgery like Davida suggests, that shifts our vantage point and not cover what the naked eye cannot see. The racial equity lens allows us to uncover the structures, policies, and behaviors that sustain unequal outcomes for communities. In naming systemic oppression, we seek to challenge individualistic thinking and interrogate the complex interactions of people, practice, institutions, and ideology that perpetuate inequity. Some questions that we should be considering is, who is impacted by this? How can we engage them in the work, and who's engaging with them? How can we do a better job engaging with our process? What are the barriers they face, and what can we do to address those barriers? What does success look to them? Not to us, but to them. What are the systems that need to be put in place to ensure we always center on people who are impacted the most? In which this leads us to consider participatory policy making. Next slide, please. Tacoma Pierce County Health Department has this wonderful infographic that demonstrates the participatory policy-making process, connecting organizational decision makers and community members to find solutions, share ideas, vote on priorities, and collaborate to plan and act on policy priorities. Solutions reflect what the community thinks is important. Community plays a role in influence decisions that shape their lives and create healthy and equitable outcomes for the community. Community outreach and engagement is an opportunity for organizations to work in collaboration with communities, staff, to build trust so they can continue to share their story, empower them, find the value in their voice, and increase accountability, awareness, and teamwork. It is the power of connection.
So I'd like to talk about a culture of continuous improvement in policy. And the reason why I thought it was really important to bring out continuous improvement in policy is that people tend to think of, and I think there's clicks on the slide. So if you want to click through, there might be text to come up. Yeah, people tend to see policies as inflexible, finite, and permanent. And part of the concern with that is, yes, policies are supposed to be overall high level, but they are also the policies that support practices, procedures, programs, et cetera. And so if our programs have outcomes that are inequitable, and if our practices produce inequitable outcomes and all of that, we have to go back and look at our policies. And unfortunately, in a lot of our organizations, there isn't a process by which policies are maintenance. And I think there's a couple other clicks on that slide. So we'd like to move from the permanent, finite, inflexible way of looking at policy to a more continuous improvement way of approaching policy. And there's a few other clicks on there, 2 more. And so the couple questions to ask ourselves is, 1, what approach should I use when I'm looking at all of these policies? I might be outdated, might need to be looked at. How do I even know where to start? And then another question is, when do I review this? When do I have a lens on it? When do I have my eyes on a policy? And also, who is involved in the policy, and where do I start? If you're just hearing about continuous improvement, you may not know what continuous improvement is. I would encourage you to research it on Google, research it on YouTube. There's tons of information out there, and there's tons of approaches, but I want to talk about, next slide, what the city of Tacoma uses. And so the city of Tacoma uses a continuous improvement framework called the CI, the 4 I's. In this one, we do have a 5th I highlighted, and it is called iterate. And in each of these stages, you see that one is the initiate phase, and that's where you identify, okay, what is it that I'm actually taking a look at? And in this case, it would be, what policy am I taking a look at? Who is involved in this policy? You know, where does this policy live, and who needs to know that I'm looking at this policy? The next one is to investigate. What have been the outcomes of this policy to date, right? How has it been implemented? who has had problems with this? Are there concerns externally? Is this policy an external one that affects people outside of the organization, or is this an internal policy that I need to have a lot more internal stakeholders view on? And then another one is to look at the concerns after you've scoped out what your body of work is and you've scoped out what information you should gather, your data. Then you look at how can we improve on this policy, on this program and this process. But for this presentation, how do we improve this policy and incorporate the information we received in our investigate phase? How do we come up with either better language? How do we come up with a new strategy of implementing this policy? This is where you really solutionize, and then you begin to implement your strategies. You test out your strategy. You say, hey, let's write this up and let's see how this would work in practice, and you experiment around it. And then the final step is that you would review your outcomes and repeat phases as necessary. And now I believe the fourth and the fifth phase is always the hardest to do, and it's the control phase. It's the phase where if you don't do this work, then your step 1, 2, 3, and 4 is almost useless if you don't have someone that's helping to make sure there's oversight on how you have structured your policy. If there's no one implementing your policy and there's no eyes on your policy, then unfortunately, all the work that you've done in stage 1, and stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 can be lost. So we want to focus on how do we have an approach that requires us to constantly review our policy, not in a constant every day. And we'll talk about that next, when to review. If you can go to the next slide. So there is no, you have to review every policy during this time, during this date, during this season. It is a best practice that your policies be reviewed biannually. And the reason why I think it's necessary to have a structure is because we, in our internship program, when we are developing this program and we recognize there needs to be high-level policy language supporting the program, there was hesitance around accepting policy that didn't involve every perspective or didn't involve every option of solution, because people were afraid to give up their right to have a voice in the policy. And if we said, oh, we're going to review it, but then we didn't have a timeline, we didn't have a person responsible to review it, we didn't have a feedback loop for community, then of course there is distrust in policy making and policy maintenance. And so it is very important that you look at your policies. There shouldn't be any policy on the books that hasn't been looked at in 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years. Even if it's just a cursory review to make sure it's still relevant, it should be looked at. Another thing that is, if your policy is dependent on local government, if it's dependent on state government, if it's dependent on federal government agencies or an external organization, and your external organization has gone through changes or laws have been updated, you have to review your policies, because policies are only relevant if they're implementable. And if they're not implementable because they're dependent on other organizations, then you just have text on a page. So make sure that if you know which policies have interdependencies. And then if your organization has gone through major change, if your leadership structure has changed, if departments have shifted, if anything like that structurally in your organization or in your leadership has changed, review your policies to make sure they line up. If you also have policies that outline how to use, if they're dependent on certain outdated procedures or outdated practices or outdated processes. If you have, for example, if you're telling someone, hey, this policy says you're supposed to use this type of, laptop or this type of connection, and that connection no longer exists, it's no longer available, then your policy is already outdated. And so then people don't know where to look. So review your policies. And I would say one thing about reviewing policies is maybe some policies only need to be reviewed every 5 years. Okay, if it's dependent on the federal government and that policy is going to be what it is because the federal government hasn't changed it in a long time, just make sure it's updated for language. Great. But if you know that there's policies that are continually need to be changed that are related to equity, that are related to interpersonal type of things that might need language updates, make sure you have someone doing cursory reviews on this. Next slide for me. So who is involved? You can get very overwhelmed if you think about the number of people that might be involved in a policy. And it's very difficult to know who's responsible for making sure policies are updated and reviewed. But if you think about, if this policy lives in a specific department, perhaps maybe there's an actor in the department that is responsible for making sure whoever is going to make decisions on a policy is informed that the policy is being reviewed, and whoever needs to give their input on the changes of the policy is informed and included and involved. And then also there may be specific people who are in leadership, if your policy is far reaching and more spread throughout your organization, if it's citywide, if it's organization-wide, if it's your entire business that are impacted by a change to this policy, then you need to make sure you have representation from the sectors of those who may be impacted by a specific change. So it can't just be, oh, I'm in HR, I'm going to change this policy, if there are other people that are going to be impacted by it. We learned our lesson when we started looking at the internship program, that we need to make sure we include multiple people as stakeholders in the development of our policies. And then again, external and internal stakeholders, depending on whether or not your policy will impact those outside of your organization or those only internally. Next slide. So the question of where to start. This is like a big question, especially if you have policies that you don't even know where they live, you don't know where they're stored, you don't know when's the last time they've been reviewed. I think a good place to start, and you can go ahead and click through all of those for me. And I think I missed a slide. Oh, no, okay. First thing that you can do is create a policy review schedule. Just decide, okay, so we have 60 policies that we have. How about we chop them up into smaller sections, smaller pieces, maybe by department, maybe by relevance, however you want to sort them, and just decide you're going to at least create a schedule of when those things are going to be reviewed. And then for each of those policies, this is actual work. This is someone's job to set this stuff up and help identify the maintenance of a policy. Identify the stakeholders, identify if there's community partners that need to be reached out to when you're looking to update this policy. Say you have this policy, then you say, we're going to update this in 2 years, or we're going to review this in 2 years. Well, make sure when you look at this policy, you look and decide and figure out who your community partners are or who your internal stakeholders are, so that you can prepare to start creating those relationships, so that when you do your updates to your policy, you have your voice of the customer in that update. And then you need to confirm responsible parties. Who's responsible for making sure this gets done? Is it HR? Is it the department? Is it the boss? Is it the president? Who's responsible for making sure this policy gets updated and gets approved? So need to identify that on your policy, and then decide on your continuous improvement framework. So if you're looking at your policies and you're saying, I don't even know where to start, consider Googling a continuous improvement framework, and you might have all the information that you need to start if you're just Googling, and you can find some tools that you can use. Now, updating a policy does not have to be major overhaul. Sometimes it's updating language. Sometimes it's just, confirming that it's still relevant, but making sure we have a lens that is continually on our policies ensures that we stay accountable to those who it impacts, and also make sure that if there are external partners that are supposed to have a view on these policies, that they have continual relationship with policymakers and policy sustainers. So the biggest portion of this continuous improvement culture in creating policy and maintaining policy is that you have to start. So thank you. Start.
Thank you so much, Rayshana. This is a really tough act to follow. All of the speakers have really laid out like an incredible platform. And this all, I'm going to try to bring it home. Bear with me. But so you might be asking yourselves, if we have a policy review channel, we've set up, we have the people in place, we know when we're going to be reviewing policies, but how do we actually do that? And how do we do that in a way that, as Davida said, helps us go through our procedure, get LASIK, and actually apply equity to all of the policies that we are reviewing. So we use the term lens of equity, There's also a tool actually called an equity lens. And I just want to deviate those two things because many of you might already know this, some of you may not. So the equity lens is actually a component, it's a decision-making tool, and it can help you analyze your policies, internal and external. So what policies might be internal? Those could be HR policies, organizational structure, how you actually structure different pay grades, your benefits that you offer, how you make staffing decisions, hiring, recruitment, and retention decisions. A lot of it is cultural as well. And so when you think about that, one question you might ask yourself on an equity lens is, who will this policy impact intentionally and unintentionally? Are they involved in the development of the policy? And many others, but those are a few just examples. External policies that you also want to think about are programs. So if you're offering services to the community or to your constituents, also governmental or advocacy policies, does your organization interface with larger systems, and how are you stepping up and advocating in those sectors? Partnerships, so who do you partner with, why, when, how, and what vendors do you use? So examples of some of those questions on an equity lens for external policy could be something like, does this policy perpetuate or help to dismantle historical, legal, or other barriers set in the past? And what disparities are identified and how can they be eliminated? Within both of these, it's important to consider who will be impacted and whether those people, the people that the policy will impact, have been included in the development. Next slide. So when you're developing an internal equity lens, or if you already have one developed, it's important to think about, what framework are we using, and is this appropriate? Because these can be massive. So I've listed a couple frameworks here. The Bar High is an incredibly large one, mostly for health departments. And then Multnomah County also has an equity lens. So you don't have to start from ground zero. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can adopt equity lenses and make them fit your organization. Really important, as was mentioned, as Rayshana talked about, who's involved in actually the development of the lens that you're going to be using. How you adopt those questions, who's involved in that, will bring you different perspectives and make sure that you are applying that LASIK policy. Examine your process. So as we talked about before, when would you use the lens? Who will use it? What policies will be reviewed, renewed, and developed? You really need to think through what policies are most important. You can start with low-hanging fruit, but you do have to start somewhere. And do you need more than one? Sometimes having an internal equity lens, you might want to have just a really short lens so that all staff can use it in the beginning and train that out across your organization. And then you might have a larger lens for policies that are much bigger, more intricate, that require a more substantial lens. So you do want it to be right-sized. You don't want it to be burdensome. You want it to be highly usable and effective. And sometimes you may need to hire a consultant to make sure that the policies that you're reviewing and the changes that you're proposing fall in line with the legal system as it is, but also that can help you think creatively. Because as we mentioned before, the systems that we work within, like the first Davida show that the fence picture, right? And we're moving towards liberation, but we're still operating in a society and in a culture where there's a fence up. And we don't want to create policies that perpetuate that eternal fence. We are trying to knock it down. So with these, you have to be creative. You have to try to strive towards a new paradigm, even if there are barriers in the way that prevent you from doing 100% of what you want to do. Maybe knock one fence board out with each policy that you're trying to develop in a different way. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about why this is so important and just give one case of what I found to be really meaningful. So I used to work at an organization that was a healthcare organization, and we had an equity lens. We looked at ourselves internally and said, if part of our mission statement and part of what we really want to do is to achieve equity for everybody, We need to be doing that internally for ourselves and for our employees. One thing that we identified through an equity lens process was we noticed that we were doing benefits the way that most organizations do, which is a percentage base. So you pay for, you know, your healthcare, you pay for your overhead, and staff that are earning the least amount in the organization are only receiving that amount from the organization itself. So like 4% of your total paycheck is what you get back from the organization. But if you're making $20,000 a year, 4% of 20,000 does not, it's not even close to what the CEO is making at like 200,000. So instead of continuing that process, which why do we even use a percentage base for some things within an organization? We looked at that, asked ourselves that question, and decided to do an equity pool. So we had everybody across the organization put 1% into a pool that was redistributed back to people who made the least amount in the organization to offset any of the cost of what they were contributing to their employee health or to their 401k. So that's a real world example of why an equity lens can have huge impacts for employees, but also externally. So next slide. All right, and when you think about external policies or using an external equity lens, one thing that I was thinking about, and you all, I would love to hear your thoughts on other kind of realms that this could have impact on, but I was thinking about grant making and how when you use a racial equity lens, oftentimes in philanthropy, many of you probably encounter this, but there's this culture of we're gonna give you money and then you as a small nonprofit or community-based organization who's actually doing the work and has the knowledge of the community, we don't trust you. We want you to spend a bunch of time and effort and energy documenting the work that you're doing and proving that the money that we give you is being handled well and that you're actually making an impact on the community. What they don't realize, philanthropy often has not realized how much work that takes to actually document how, like what you're doing, who you're doing that with. The amount of money that they give you does not incorporate evaluation. They do not provide evaluation services oftentimes, and they just say, here's $100,000 to do this work, but we're not giving you any additional, and now spend 40 of that to do a broad evaluation. So if we changed our paradigm and if philanthropy came alongside an organization and said, we fully believe in what you're doing. We know that you work with the community, that you have the expertise, and we're going to come alongside you and help to evaluate what you're doing so that you have this information and you can use it for continuous improvement. That's a paradigm shift. It's bringing trust, it's bringing expertise back to the organization that's actually doing the work. Another one that I just really wanted to highlight, I love this. So reparations. There was an article that came out from Harvard. They have an anti-racist epidemiology department that I love. And they came out with a study that showed that had we been paying reparations for slavery, that we would have reduced infection and transmission of COVID-19 and deaths anywhere from 31 to 68% total. So had we come with an equity lens and looked at, you know, how are we paying reparations? Are we? No, we're not. That doesn't have just impacts on one population. It's a ripple effect. It impacts everybody outward from there. Next slide. Actually, I think that might be the last one for me.
Okay, look, I don't know about y'all, but they brought that heat today. Like they brought that fire today. And wow, you guys did things. This chat is blowing up. This whole unit brought that heat. I think you guys, you really spoke on something that a lot of us don't talk about, and it is the policy. We don't talk about the policy, and the policy is everything. And what you guys just brought to the table was some heat. Bottom line. Now, I know we usually go into breakout rooms, but I felt that this was a conversation that I just saw the heads nodding. I saw the emojis popping. I think we need to have a nice family conversation and really speak on this. So I'm going to pass it over to Shelly because we all know how she gets down to business. But let's get ready to have a great conversation. Every last one of y'all, please, if your voices are not heard, this is a place to be able to bring those voices, bring the questions that you guys have. Don't be afraid, because when we shut down, y'all going to be mad because y'all didn't say nothing. And you know how it feels when you said, man, I should have said that. One more minute, I would have said that. So let's talk, man. Let's have a good conversation. Policies team, thank you guys so much. It was amazing. Once again, y'all brought that heat, and I don't know what to do because it just keeps going, and keeps going. But Miss Shelley Willis, it's on you.
This is great. So, normally we do our general discussions, our breakout sessions. We were just trying to get a vibe and a feel for the room, and the chat has been on fire. So I want to make sure that all of our presenters have their cameras on, and go ahead and just jump on here and ask questions. Ask questions or make comments. There was so much information shared during this presentation. So feel free to jump in. I'm trying to look for any hand raising or of any sort, but jump in if you have commentary to add to what was presented today, or you have questions of the presenters about their thought process. Please, by all means, let's jump into it. Don't be shy. Or I'm going to call you out based off of what I'm reading in the chat. So don't be shy.
Get them.
Okay. All right. So I'm fixing to hit this chat. There's some commentary going on. Bob Danielle said, isn't something that's so true that orgs hide behind policy when they do not want to address issues that they can change? So what does that mean? Any of our presenters, can you expand on what comments he just made?
I'll step in and say, I've heard this in my organization that, oh, we can't because the policy. Oh, we can't because the policy. And I've also heard that same wording used in, oh, we can't because qualifications. Oh, we can't because of whatever. Not understanding that we are the people that have the responsibility of updating policy. We are the people that have the responsibility of updating qualifications. We are the people that have the responsibility of updating procedures and processes and practices. So to say that something cannot be done because of policy is almost to say, oh, I don't want to do any work to investigate if something can be done in the policy, or how do we make it a yes and not just hide behind what is existing. Because everyone knows, right? Some laws that were put in place generations ago were legal, but they weren't right. And so we have to stop saying, oh, it's in writing. That means it's right and it's finite. And so, yeah, it's the truth.
Bob, you took your mic off mute. You want to expand on that or add to it? We can't hear you. I know we hate it when that happens. That's okay. Put it in the chat. While you're putting that in the chat, I want to go back to something that Michael said. Michael, you talked about whole CRM systems and IT support. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so when she was talking about the need for organizations to track and do everything that they're doing, there's a lot of nonprofits that are still working with Excel sheets, and they're keeping track and they're doing a lot of work, but they don't have Salesforce or Zoho or any of those other things, or Microsoft Teams, or the cash flow to put those things in place, train the people how to use them, train them how the things interact, how to teach it to clients, how to get it out there on the web, how to use it in all the many ways it can be used. And then somebody saying, well, to participate in this, you have to have, it's just like job applications. What Tamara says, the HR is a new red line. You have to have done 17 years of community engagement and helped 86 people per hour and show all these different things. And those reports can be really challenging to do. So if they don't, if the organization's not offering some kind of funding or I would say operational support, they're not really giving that full amount.
Okay, Bob, you want to check your audio now and see if it's up before we go to the next question? You're on mute. No, okay. It's okay,
saying
put
it's
it in the
full.
chat. So I want to go to earlier, Suzanne Park asked a question of you, Davida, about your insights on the union. So wanted to make sure that we capture on your brief point about unions.
So the first thing I always ask individuals when you're looking at your unions, step back and look at who is part of the union, who is engaging in the union. And oftentimes it's not BIPOC individuals engaging in the union. That's red flag number one. And oftentimes, and then it goes back to what Rashana was saying about policy. Oftentimes unions are used as a way to still keep that policy. This is our policy on doing things. And I know for myself in higher ed, it's been used to keep racist individuals in their positions because it's a protection piece. But it does not look at the policies, procedures, culture, practices from a position of a person of color. So when as a tenured professor, when I was a tenured professor, I had a lot of challenges with the union because they didn't understand what it was like teaching higher ed, teaching on anti-racism as a Black woman. When you're looking at, and we'll talk about like our tenure process, when you're looking at student evaluations, there are very negative against me for most of my white students because I was too harsh. Why am I talking about race? Why am I doing this? And the union was like, well, this is how we get our annual increases. This is how we're using this as for evaluations of employees, but that evaluation through the union does not consider my identity as a Black woman. And so oftentimes our unions are based off an identity of a white male. So that is an important piece to look at and step back and look. I even asked even at Pierce, as much as I love them, I'm like, dude, look at your union meetings. Who's coming to the meetings? It's not for us, so we don't use them. And unions have also been used as a gatekeeper to keep people and individuals out of organizations. And so really examining those policies and those pieces with that. I just want to go back to one of the things too that I think Michael was talking about. In higher ed, they've even begun to get rid of where you have to have a doctoral degree to be an admin. Because for a while, that was again about the prestige. What is the difference between a master's and a doctoral degree that would keep a person from being able to lead a program?
Wow.
I mean, if you really dig into that why of that. So that's kind of what those pieces with the union.
I wanted to kind of jump on that as well. It's the barriers to entry. I went to UWT and took the microeconomics class, and my mind was blown. And they talked a lot about how barriers to entry are there not for ensuring that people have a specific skill set, but to keep that pool from being competitive. If anybody can, if a thing is really a set of skills that you have that you build upon yourself, if you do those without getting a license or without getting a specific degree, that degree or that license or that bar becomes something that helps all the other people that are doing that same job keep competition out. And if if you take that at a macro level of race and all of those things, people that group together in a union or group together in different things can make unions hard to enter. They can make doctorate programs difficult to enter for different reasons other than we just want the best people in this position. Also, like Davida was saying, the difference between a master's and a doctorate and somebody being able to do or fulfill a position, you can see in degrees, it used to be a bachelor's that was the gateway, and then they made it a master's, and then now masters are making the same as entry-level people. You know what I mean? So there's always these constant moving of the goalposts, and it's not always for quality control, it's for access control a lot of times.
I have to add one more thing to that, and then I will shut up. And I think Roshana had something too. Look at what Michael just said. before the bachelor's degree was the gateway. And I know everyone is not on the Bill Cosby wagon right now, but right around that time when he was really promoting Black students, Black children, Black and brown children going to school to get their bachelor's degree, and you start seeing the enrollment of Black and brown individuals in colleges, all of a sudden that goalpost moved to masters. Then all of a sudden we have more getting masters. Then the goalpost moved to, nope, you must have a doctorate. Now we have more Black and brown individuals getting their doctorate degrees. And so, I mean, there's nothing after that. I don't know how they're going to move it now, but constantly trying to hold that carrot out of the reach of individuals based on the notion of excellence and professionalism and intellect. So those are those pieces.
You know, Davida, oh no, go ahead, Michael.
Just the because it was the bachelor's, then it was master's, and then it's doctorate, then it's MBA, then it's PMI, then it's Six Sigma, black belt, green belt, like all that. Like there's so many different things, and they're really just positive project management processes and understanding how things should work as a whole organization. But I'm going to stop because I think Peter is going to talk.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah. I'm kind of riffing off of Davida and Michael. You both described a big problem in organizations is that they put these arbitrary educational requirements and such to block off, and it creates a systematic problem for an organization. And what's funny is I did an experiment of my own, and what I did is I removed my education on applying for jobs that I would almost definitely get an interview in the past. And I found that I got no interviews at all. And I tested 20 different organizations, some that I trusted very heavily, that they had very progressive programs. And I geared it towards substitution language, where they had language like a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. And I know I had that equivalent experience, and I know I would have been interviewed in the past, and I got no interviews. And that's like 20. So it made me realize my organization needs to do a better job to look at those minimum requirements and own up to substitution language, because I don't believe we have.
Thank you for that. Bob, are you unmuted? Are you able to, can we hear you now?
I'm unmuted. I mean, so I guess I just can't figure things out this morning. So, this has been a great conversation. I'm, as somebody who's always been kind of the voice of change, I've always said in the past, and I'll say it again, that sometimes change never really happens unless there's an economic force or reason behind it. When you start getting people to cost them some money, all of a sudden, as mentioned before, all of a sudden everybody wants to change policy. All of a sudden things are seen in a different light. And, it's unfortunate that the world isn't like that, but a lot of these policies and past practices that continue to exist today and continue to provide barriers and obstacles, it's because, I'll be candid, there's a lot of leaders that are just lazy. They do not want to do it, or they don't have the power to do it. They only have the power of the title, but not really the power of the influence. And so, I think I might have shared with some on this group. I just recently left an organization that I was a part of, not for work, but some of the other work that I do in the community. It was for these reasons. It was like, I didn't want to be duplicit in the fact that they were continuing to oppress the same groups that they're trying to serve. And so, it takes a lot of courage. You have to stand up to it. I know that, sometimes we don't want to, because we're going to, we could lose our jobs, and we could lose, whatever we may have, gathered and earned over the years. But some of us that are in that position need to take a stand. And if it costs us X, but it helps Y down the line, then we have to do it. I mean, not that we have to, I want to. So I don't know what else to say, but
that's
pause now.
That is great insight. I want to capture something that was a comment that was made on our Facebook Live. Kelly Blutcher, she said, let's not forget the student loans, which then affect credit and debt to income ratio, which stops you in your track for home ownership. So there's a whole lot of isms. Earlier when Michael brought up the GI Bill, you know, and being a veteran, I remember when the GI Bill was celebrating 75 years and I made a comment, is it really 75 years that you really should be celebrating, or is it more like 45 years that you should be celebrating, where then you finally served all veterans regardless of race? So as a veteran, I did not celebrate 75 years. And as a veteran and an advocate, I used my platform and took an opportunity to address the issues of oppression that the the Department of Defense did not honor. You know, they did not honor all veterans. So what are we really celebrating? What is our truth that we should be celebrating when it comes to the GI Bill, when it comes to VA loans and veterans not being able to get the VA loans, and in all of these things, you know, not being allowed for any of that. And so if you're a military dependent, and if you've been a part of a military family and you're a person of color, then historically you and your family were actually denied benefits. And so it wasn't up until, and I mean, when you look at the concept of time, and I want all of us to think about this, I always ask that question. I asked it when we did our special session last time. Generationally, every decade, the concept of time in and of itself, what has changed in so the advancement of technology and the leverage of how information gets shared, right? And how we can actually get access to knowledge and then form factual arguments to support what we're doing, right? And why we're doing it. And so now access can't necessarily be denied on every front. And then going and seeking that knowledge is really important. So that personal wealth. And so Rashawn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, you made me think about the concept of the minority voice being subsumed into the larger majority voice, and how that happens in holidays, it happens in like you said, celebrations, happens in policies, and how, you know, policies are set. And it's like, well, the majority are served, but it's always the frontline communities that are, well, it serves the majority, so this policy is going to be for everybody. And I think the hindrance of, maybe not the hindrance, but the problem is right now is that if we're moving in equity and we're saying, okay, we're going to review things and we're going to be equitable going forward, if we have not reviewed our policies to say who is being impacted, are the frontline communities and minority communities and those marginalized, are their voices elevated in this development of this policy, or in the maintenance of this policy? And I think that is a major issue for me when I see policies that haven't been reviewed in 10 years. Well, a lot has happened in 10 years. LGBTQIA movement has happened in the last 10 years. There's been so much to happen for us to say, oh no, that's been on the books for too long. That's been on the books long enough, and we don't need to review that. That's worked for the majority of us. Well, the majority happens not to be super diverse. So I think that we have to look at our policies and make sure that when we're doing our continuous improvement, that our external partners and the voice of our customers is not just the majority, and that the minorities just get subsumed into that large ball, but that we actually elevate the voice of the minorities.
Is there anyone else, any other commentary? I see Davita, is your hand up, Davita?
I am. Sorry, my dog was acting crazy. I just wanted to go back to one quick thing that was said about the student loans. That is actually in my position that we're really looking at. So part of my role is I oversee our bachelor's in teaching program, where all of our teachers go and do student teaching in the field. And it's a year-long student teaching process that they do not get paid. And so ideally, yes, it's great to be able to student teach for an entire year because you get that full experience. But what barriers or what are we causing in regards to these student loans? Because we're asking students, just take out more student loans and live off that while you're getting your degree. And we're really having to go back and re-examine, reevaluate that. Like, yes, well-intentioned, because we were trying to work on the retention of BIPOC teachers to last past the first 2 to 3 years, of getting them that full experience, getting them that deeper experience in teaching. But on the other end, we're increasing their student debt, which puts them right into this racist system, this racist economic system that's causing them to have other issues in buying a home. I'm 43. I just bought a home last week, the first one. And that is a very racist system. So really have to step back and look at our policy of like where we're trying to be anti-racist, we're creating or in a racist system here and looking at those pieces.
Thank you. Tamara, I see your hand up.
I wanted to touch on a little bit, Garrett had highlighted in the chat when he discussed how some jobs are being rewritten, but at the same time, depending on your degree, the wages are dropped. So, you know, you bring in, and I've definitely found it in the Black community, the BIPOC community, that, you know, we have to come with a little extra. But it always seems that we start at the lower scale, you know. So, hey, we heard you got a doctor, but we're going to start you at level 1, but we're going to go ahead and bring Timmy in because Timmy makes me feel comfortable, but Timmy's a level 2, you know. And I've seen it in many organizations where, you know, you fight so hard to become qualified. Then as a person of color, you are qualified, but you have to figure out where your principles are. Am I going to take less money when I know that I'm overqualified so I can get in the door? Or do I just have to stand up and fight my values and say, you know what, I'm going to go on? Why? Because I know that this person is not better qualified than I am. I know that to a T. You know, and I believe Peter was talking about that, where he knew that he was overqualified for certain things. But if you don't have, you know, those degrees to where they make you feel comfortable, then it puts you on the back burner anyways. You know, so it's just that systematic loss all the way through to where a degree makes them feel comfortable. And in my opinion, a degree just says that you can follow directions. I just need to know that you can follow directions. And then we're going to go ahead and give you some extra money. So, yeah, no, I thank you, Garrett. I love that you brought that up because it's so true. It's so true.
I see Sarah with her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, I hear all of these issues as opportunities. And these are all individual fence posts that are asking us all to take them down. And I think that, you know, I feel like I found my people, because when we can have conversation about policy like this, where everybody is just jazzed about like rewriting and reworking and changing the policies, because they are literally the building blocks of the paradigm that we use to create our systems. So we have to change them. It's imperative. And when I hear everybody on this call engaged in this way, it makes me so like, I know that in a year from now, we're going to be living in a different reality than what we are right now.
Amazing. Michael, I see your hand up.
I was going to say something along the lines of what Tamara was saying about degrees, and just back to HR, that if the policies are wrong, HR becomes blind. Like literally the talent and opportunities that are out there that can move a company forward are often overlooked because they're looking for specific licenses, titles, or different things instead of testing if the person can actually do the job. One of the books I'm reading, it was like the core things they're looking for are character, competence, and chemistry. And a lot of what I see in applications don't really look at the core competencies for the position. They say, we want you to have 5 years of experience because we think 5 years is enough for you to be able to do your job well. But maybe somebody learned this job in 2 weeks and they can do it with their eyes closed, and they want to find another opportunity, or they don't like the work culture where they were. I was in an interview recently and they asked, one of the questions was like, besides all the, you know, they're gauging what your personality is, what if you're late to work, or all those different things. But they asked me, when's the last time you used PowerPoint? And I was like, huh? Like, I use all kinds of, I've compiled videos and turned them into presentations, all these different things. But PowerPoint specifically was like a hiring quota for the thing. I was like, maybe I could just show you what I do, or how does this question really apply to all these other things that you're asking about? I can use Illustrator, Photoshop, grass telefactor, which is from my sleep tech days. Like there's a lot of things in technologies that I have, but how does your question really apply to the working and walking out of this position? So that's something else, is for HR departments to really look at and see, is this process bringing me the best people or the diverse group of people that actually can complete this position, versus this looks good on paper, and so that's why they're going to come in. I commented before that you almost have to have an IT degree to get your resume to eyes that can say yes, because you have to word things properly. So even if you're not good at your job, if you're good at writing your resume, you can get into a position that somebody that's not as good as you would get, or just different small variables that don't really make a difference in your ability. That's just some things I've noticed.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any HR professionals in our on our meeting today that might want to add any commentary to that before we start to wrap up? Bob said he does have a question, but about policies, and he wants to, I'm trying to catch it. He wants to continue to be amazed when no one knows why a policy is in place. Sadly, he remains amazed that it continues to remain in place when most, if not all, knows it needs to be changed. But I don't want to, I wanted to see if there were any HR professionals on here who wanted to add any additional comments to this, how this discussion has just kind of transpired around policies and hiring practices. Peter?
Hi, everyone. I have a little bit of HR experience when I worked. I wouldn't want to mention the company, but in line with what Peter said, I actually would want to corroborate when it comes to having a master's or an MBA to even get your foot in the door. And I would want to use myself as an example. You know, I came into the country, into the United States with 2 degrees, and it was so hard to get a job. And, you know, I had my friends tell me, hey, go get a master's if you want to get a dignifying job, so to say. And of course, I went that route. And, you know, it took a whole lot of effort, you know, with loans and whatnot to even get the degree, so to say. So here is where I'm going. I realized that personally, I had to work twice as hard, even when I got the employment, just to be validated, just to be appreciated. You know, unlike my other colleagues, you know, a number of them would go, I would say it this way, they wouldn't work as hard as I would, but I realized that I needed to prove myself. I needed to show that I could do the job. And of course, when there were instances where I had to work late nights, I would do it because I had to prove a point, unlike my other colleagues. Equally, when it comes to wage discrimination, so to say, I've also been opportunity to work with an organization where I had to reconcile the pay of the caregivers. I worked in a healthcare field where I coordinated the care appointment system of the organization, and I realized that for people of color, the pay that they were actually given was, or were, considerably lower than what the colleagues were given. You know, I wished I could have, you know, spoken up for them, but I just knew that this was discrimination. You know, the policies didn't favor them, but, you know, I had a discussion with my director and she said, this is how it's been, and that's how it's gonna be. And, you know, it's a painful experience for me because I couldn't speak my caregivers, but at the same time, this is like a fundamental problem that has been ingrained in the system, and it's a really good platform here that conversation, and, you know, I'm really happy to be a part of this, and hopefully, you know, we can get the word out to organizations, and, you know, some changes can start reflecting in how things are done in different organizations. That's my contribution.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. So we are at 5 minutes out from this, and so we felt that it was important to just stay in the larger group and have a really more thoughtful conversation, even though we know smaller breakout sessions, people are, you know, you will open up a little bit more, but we might miss some of that wonderful content and just dialogue back and forth. And I love looking at the videos of you on and looking at your head nods and and your inquisitive looks on your faces when a point is made that's resonating deeply with you. So as a facilitator, I get real geeked out about seeing your faces and really seeing your actual reactions. It actually tells us if we're going down the right path. And I want to say thank you to all of our presenters, but I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Tamar, and then I'll close it out and wish you all a great month. Jeff?
Thank you, Shelley. I'll keep it quick. I just wanted to say thank you to the policy team. A lot of work goes into this, and we pulled it together last minute, and great job, fantastic presentation, a lot of really great info, and just very grateful. Thank you.
I definitely want to second you on the policy group. You guys just did amazing. Just the conversations in the chat were just incredible. Man, it's so blessed to be a part of this group. Thank you guys, all the new people here. Welcome. I hope that you guys come again, but this is the community that we are building within our community, and that's a safe place for us to be, discuss, collaborate, and try to do our best to bring that back out to our community. So thank you guys.
All right, so April, I want to just give all of our presenters for over the last 3 sessions that we've had. Can we just give them a round of applause? Use your emoji, clap your hands. I can't imagine you not being able to have something to take away. Jeff did share the presentation in the chat. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and I believe a copy or version of the recording will be sent out. So I want to remind you, if nothing else, know that, again, this is a beautiful ecosystem of galvanized voices where you're not just supposed to come and just sit and listen. You're supposed to go outside of this and activate. Take the knowledge that you're gaining being a part of the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force powered by Workforce Central outside of this moment and activate in your own organizations and communities. There's a lot of grassroots movements, and there's a lot of people who don't know. And so we want to break down those walls, those silos, and we want everyone to know all are invited to just learn and seek out knowledge and information and build community in a way that the Workforce Development Board, which is Workforce Central, has wanted the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force to actually be the hub for. So thank you so much for being here. We want you to stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, be kind. We will see you next month on May 5th. Have a great day, everyone.